It's Wednesday the 2nd of May, and it's been a bit of a strange season so far. It's not been a lot of light, been loads of rain. We've just had the wettest April for 100 years, and I can't remember many days where it hasn't been raining most of it. The cuttings are all growing a little bit slow for my liking. There's the main batch there. I took the lids off of those ones because they're obviously rooted, and those have probably come off at the weekend. Now that's taken them just over 3 weeks to root, and I know there's some amongst them that haven't lost many. I mean, they've been good in that sense, but they have been slow to root, and it can only be light levels and temperature that's doing that. The problem is if you put the temperature up too much in the propagators, then they damp off. But you can see things are a bit tight in here. We've got plants that have been potted, and they're really almost ready for going into 5-inch pots. Let's see, go around the corner. I took the last batch of cuttings about a week or so ago, and they're just inside a reduced cloche there, and these are Challenger plants. It's about 50 there that I potted yesterday morning. It seems when it rains like it is, the only thing you can do is stuff in the greenhouse, but I'm severely running out of space, and normally by now I've got space outside in a cold frame. I've had to move some plants outside. These are sort of old mother plants, and plants I'm not necessarily growing. They're just there for pot tubers, or if I really get into trouble, but normally I'd throw them away. This year I thought I'd keep them and as I say, pot tuber them if I need to, just to give me a bit of spare stock for next year. As you can see, the plot now is only half dug. I've sprayed off the weeds that started to come through, and they're dying quite well now. But with the rain as it has been, it's just been too wet to realistically get on there and dig. So I've been trying to do some other things. And I've been making a cold frame in between the heavy rain showers, but that won't take long. That's only about 7 or 8 mornings digging, and I'll have that bit done. But the covered area's already sorted, and this rain is sort of breaking the soil down. It's a bit of a contrast from last year when we hadn't seen any rain and everything was so dry. So I'll just show you the cold frame, or making the cold frame up, so we can move the plant. This is a bit of spare ground just on the left of the plot. Normally there I grow potatoes when I get round to planting them, so that's been dug for those. Plenty of weeds. It doesn't get looked after, this bit, and those have been sprayed off. I'm just waiting for those to die, and where the plastic is where I'm going to put the cold frame. I've just made up some sides from some old scrap wood to come off a Christmas tree pallets at work, and I've just basically now cut the planks together, as you can see, and then used some offcuts off the tunnel, off my covered area, some spare bits of covering, and just stapled them around the sides. So there's 4 of those, they're about 3.5 metres in length. I just need to screw those together to make the surround, and then I'll have a tarpaulin that I can just pull over the top. Mostly we won't need to cover them over the top, it's only if we get some frosts, but at least it'll give me some space outside, so this will give me an area bigger than the greenhouse. I've just put some more old spare covers on the ground just to slow the weeds down that are underneath. I've chopped them away. It's a bit of a sort of mixed match of weeds and rubbish there, but they just stop the weeds coming through and keep the ground clean, and the covers will go, or the cold frame will go on top of that. Well, that's it up. The green tarpaulin ready to pull over the top. I've just screwed some braces on the corners just to help stop that sagging, and I've got a separate piece that I've put across to stop it sort of dipping in the middle too much. I've moved out the Challenger that have just been potted. There's 50 Challenger there, a few El Marie, and a few El Frames. They're just for stock plants really. So they're ready. Those are plants that are going in the ground. These are the old stock plants, the old mother plants that I've took the tops out of, and I'll just keep hold of those for short time. When I know I've got enough cuttings potted to give me spare for pot tubers, then I'll throw those away. And these are ones that have moved out the greenhouse just to harden off a bit, and they're ready for potting on into 5s, and then make their way over to the other side of the cold frame when they're done. 13th of May, most of the plants are now potted. There's still a few in the propagators that are just finishing off. There's a very late batch, and a few things like Winholm that just doesn't want to root. So that's the sort of stage of plants right now. These have all been potted about a week. A few bits and pieces ready to pot in there and round, and again these have all been potted about a week. There's some that are just potted on before. I'm just starting to pot up into 5-inch pots now. I know it's sort of only a couple of weeks to planting, but I tend to think a plant at this sort of stage is ready to pot on into a 5. It won't have much of a root system. I'll be filling the pot, but I don't want it to. I want it to keep on growing. There's a batch of Valentine there, about 110 there I think in total. So I'm pleased with that, plenty of choice. And there's some decent plants amongst them. None of them are bad, but it's funny how you always get some that are stronger than others, but we can get a selection from those. Here we are potting, very technical. Just got the compost in a wheelbarrow, plants to pot there, something to sit on, somewhere to put them when they're potted. And this is Mars and George, and that's about as much root as I want in these 7cm pots, and that for me is ready to pot. The plant's still nice and soft. It would have been potted in this pot for just about 2 weeks. And that's ready now to go into a 5-inch pot, and that'll be moved outside now to just grow on a bit slower. Hopefully 2 weeks time won't have too much rain. We've had nothing but rain so far, and the plot will be ready. It's pretty much all dug now. Just the last little bit to do, and that'll get raked over, fertilised, and marked out for planting.